Welcome to Best Wellness Interviews, where I interview successful people who share some experiences they've had in life and strategies that they use to move on from issues. I'm Kristine Best, I'm your host, and today my guest is James Hayden. Welcome, James. He's
Good to be
from
here.
the United States, and it is the United States, isn't it? Northern
From it is from Seattle, and we'll be playing the Australia football team here in the next couple days in the World Cup.
that sounds like fun.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
you'll probably have some Aussie barrackers there supporting the team. Anyway, welcome to my show. Thank you for being here, and you've got a very interesting story. And what I would like you to do is to introduce yourself in a couple of minutes and just tell us who you are and what you do now.
Absolutely. So I advise companies that I say when their sales machine or their revenue generation is broken. I work a lot with, or I should say primarily with technology companies that are getting off the ground. So I work primarily with founders, early stage companies, and when companies hit um, 10 to 20 million in revenue and need to go to the next level, and all that intellectual property is in the brain of the founders usually. So I work with companies on when they have new products they want to take to market and when they want to increase their revenue if they're stuck in certain areas. And I usually come in for a short period of time or a burst of activity. So that's my career. Did you want me to go any deeper, Kristine?
So you help them build the infrastructure, or you give them ideas on how they can do it,
I
or both.
bring in the money.
You bring in them.
Uh, so it's um, the products they have, getting them to market and ensuring that they're getting the right message to the right people at the right time. So really aligning up a lot of different things to make sure that a company succeeds at what they do, which is ultimately revenue based. And so getting the right people in place, the right processes, do they have the right technology to support their success and organizational structure? Um, that's the basics of what I work on. So I've worked with companies and generated over a billion dollars, US dollars in revenue over my career, and I worked hard to get there.
It puts out
Oh, I
because
lost you there.
my earpiece just decided to drop out of my ear.
Ah, okay.
Of course, a blooper right in the middle. Um, so now, because you've got quite a lot of different aspects to your life, there are a few things I want to talk about because they're all very interesting and they tie in to who you are today. So I would like to start at the point where you discovered that you were adopted. And I would like to find out how old were you then, and how did that actually make you feel? Who told you? How did you become aware of it?
Yeah, my parents were always very open about the fact that I was adopted. So there were, as a matter of fact, growing up, there were books around about the adopted child and the adopted family, and so we spoke very openly about it. And it for the longest time in my childhood, I just thought it was a normal thing. And then, I found out from other people, from friends and relatives that that's not necessarily the case. There are more people who are biologically related and the biological parents raise them and adopted people are yeah, there just aren't as many of us. So yeah, I went through a few experiences, and when it started hitting me that it was different was I had a couple cousins that were adopted. their parents didn't tell them. I heard about, and it really was dramatic. Um, uh, had a dramatic impact on their lives. And when I was 7, I was we were having a family dinner. It was my grandmother from the mom that raised me, and my dad and I were having dinner in California where we lived at the time. And my grandmother turned to me, looked me in the eye, and said, "You'll never be as successful as your cousins because you're not blood, so you just won't be." And so, at that point, as a 7-year-old, I started getting my head around, I,
Yeah,
I'm different.
that
And
that is significant.
yeah, very significant. And I found out a couple of other pieces of data too. Data, that sounds kind of cold, but information. When The way adoptions were in the States then is, and my godfather was the doctor that delivered me. He it was not on the maternity floor, it was on a surgical floor. And at the time, they felt that a baby shouldn't be touched by a human, an adopted baby, for 5 days. So completely gloved up. I had no human touch for the first 5 days. Now, there's a psychological impact. There's no question on that.
Sure.
And so I'd heard about that. And, my parents were, as they were doing research, told me, this happened. We want you to know how much we love you, all that stuff. And then later on, after I met my birth mother, I found out that um, her mother had given her a chemical, she said, to get me to abort. And well, here I am. So it didn't work, but and it turned out it was quinine. And I've always been curious why I enjoyed gin and tonic. So um, the um, yeah, it was a myth back in the day. But I mean, those are a few traumatic events really starting out a young life, to find out about. And
Yeah, that was
so,
an impressionable age at 7. Yeah,
sorry, that was what?
that was an impressionable age at the age of 7 to
Yeah.
hear that comment from your grandmother. Um, that would make you feel isolated, different from the fam, not part of the family, not accepted.
Yeah, it was, I mean, I felt different than most humans, actually. And so, and I always, the people who came from, I had a perception there were, perfect families out there. I've learned differently. But and so my perception was, family would be different if it was your birth parents, and but I didn't know. I had no information on what that meant. So I viewed that in that
There's,
way, and I had
there's perfect
it
family,
walked,
Jane.
pardon me.
There's no perfect family, even with
No,
people who have
gosh,
blood relatives.
no, no. And I'd walk down the street and I'd see somebody who I thought looked like me, and I'd wonder, can I be related to that person? So that's been in the back of my mind forever.
Right. Yeah, that would be an unsettling feeling, not knowing who your relatives were or if you had any, because you want to find your family. You want to find your roots. Most people do anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I did a year ago. And I put the final puzzle piece together.
That took a while. First, you're now
I'm a
much
slow I'm a slow
in.
learner.
Well, that's all right. That makes two of us. I am too. So there are some things that just come along at a later time in your life, but you know what? It's the right time. Doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
No regrets because here you are. You've moved on and you've discovered some things. So how did you did something with genetic or was it family tree stuff? You
It
did.
was ancestry.com.
Ancestry.
I was
Right.
on I was on 123andMe, and they had some issues for data breaches and that, and a friend said you should check out Ancestry because they are tied into the Mormon Church, which has amazing genealogy, and they're owned by one of the biggest private equity firms, the joint venture with Blackstone. They've got a bigger, better database. So I went with them, and it was just a few weeks later that I found out my one of my daughters was tracking the progress, and we were in a different time zone. She'd reached out to me and just said, Dad, you've got this really cool sister that you didn't know about, and she happens to live in the same area as you do in Seattle. So, um, yeah. And then, I had to convince her my half sister, I wasn't a stalker, that I was legitimately a relative. And then we've been pretty much inseparable for about a year.
Okay, that's interesting. Um, so, that just amazes me how much, because if I put myself in your shoes, I'd be forever wondering about my background. Who am I? Why did this happen to me? And because they're questions, they're valid questions. And a lot of people, I think there are two different types of people who want to know and those who don't. Sometimes people are just happy to go along with the life they've been given, and other people want to dig and delve and find out the truth of the matter. And, there's no right or wrong way. It's up to the individual to make that decision. So, what made you really want to find out the real driving force behind that?
It, my belief was that my life wouldn't be complete if I didn't understand that. And there were suspicions we had. My birth mom had quite a few suitors, and so we weren't sure about who it was for the longest time. And one of her suitors passed away a couple of years ago, and he was based here, and he was the person that the Mario game was named after. And I thought, I love Italy. I feel at home in Italy, so it must be this Mario guy. Seriously, that's his name. And and I just felt like I needed a validation rather than, having somebody go down and take a snip of his hair and measure up the DNA. I'm glad it didn't work out that way. But yeah, it was just from the time I knew who my birth mother was, I wanted to know the rest of the picture. And it's a lot of other people who are adopted say they just don't want to know. But I'd have to say, for me, a lot of things came flooding in terms of how I've lived my life in the past, how I'm currently living it, and some of the insecurities that I carried with me um, are gone. They're just gone. And the story of my birth family, my birth father, um, really amazing, interesting person in some ways, and just five baby mamas that were out there for 12 of us. And he had his struggles, but he was very gifted in some areas and very um, tested, if you want to say that, in other areas. So certainly not a perfect scenario, but I embrace the story, and I'm very, very proud of it.
So, you got to meet and speak to your birth father?
Never did. He passed away in 2014.
Okay, so it was ancestry.com that got you the information about your father? Okay,
It did. Well, and then my half siblings have filled in the information too.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, so talk about meeting your half sibling.
Well, I've met most of them, and most of them are in Idaho and live over that way, and just they live different lives than our birth father did. He was, like I say, a brilliant athlete, and actually academic, somewhat. And my birth sister that I met here, Donnie Ray, is like I said, I went to one of her yoga classes earlier today, and she turned the trauma she had in her life into somebody that's what I would say is a fitness and wellness maven. She's got a very strong following, and I'd recommend anybody if they're looking for either virtual or if they live in this area to attend her classes. I do, and they're fabulous. Um, but yeah, she's one of these people. She's really turned her those experiences that were very difficult in her life into some positive things. And where I resonate with that is, the same thing, that the trauma, the insecurity I had being adopted, I really channeled it into, um, fortunately or unfortunately, some workaholism. And that's where it manifested itself. I always felt I had to prove myself. I always felt I had to work harder, never worked hard enough. Um, because I had a fear of being abandoned in careers. A couple of companies that I worked with, I had a major impact on some turnarounds, and one company wanted to. I turned around the poorest performing division in the company, and then was off to a new project within that company, and so I had a fairly substantial amount of stock options, and 2 weeks, about 2 years before they uh, they sold the company, and this stock would have come in for me. I thought, well, I've had some success, but they'll find out who I am, and maybe they'll fire me, and I don't know if they'll ever make it. And with I've worked and advised over 140 companies, and a lot of it is I just that fear of abandonment has translated into the workplace. And I come in and out of organizations quickly. I can identify patterns and give them recommendations and get them on the right track. But staying around for a longer period of time has been a challenge for me. And it goes back to um, some of the things I went through in my life, or the way I saw those securities or those insecurities. So the one company I talked about sold for $250 million, and I had about 1% of the company. And just I I it was weird. I just walked away. And I didn't know it would actually happen, but um, a lot of things I didn't see through because I had a fear of that abandonment with
So
with
now you have insight. Now you have insight into why you were like that, and you don't need
yeah,
to be like that anymore. So having
yeah.
these answers about your ancestry and who you are really, that's helped you move forward and overcome some of those insecurities.
It has. And the other place where it really resonated with me is people I worked with said that I was a chameleon. I could come in and blend in, and any any situation, any organization, what that meant. And I've been called out by especially people in my family is like, you said that, but that's not really, your voice or really what you're about. So that people pleasing part of the personality too was that, also that fear of being abandoned. If I don't say this, I'll be abandoned by that person, rather than staying true to my voice or really what I believed in. So yeah, watch out, world. I don't do that anymore. But it's very liberating, and I feel the close relationships I have are much more honest, and I feel I'm communicating more effectively with people because I say what's on my mind. And you do that, and it's the fear of the reaction is worse than the actual reaction generally.
Yes, I think a lot of people are fearful of that part of them that they don't know or don't understand, and they don't want to know it because it challenges them. But if they actually embrace that about themselves, find out why they feel that way, why they're like that. That can be, as you said, very liberating because if you know yourself, it means that you can just pivot or do whatever you want because you know who you are and what you want in life. Whereas if you don't know who you are, you've got nowhere to start from. You're lost.
That's true. And I'd have to say one of the things I've learned from my sister Donnie, who I hope will be on one of your future podcasts, is that and a recognition that we all face, every one of us faces some kind of trauma, and
Everyone, I
it
think.
can make or break you, right?
Yep.
And in my case, the trauma I did have a very supportive birth mom, and after that incident I mentioned when I was 7, and she started working with me on daily affirmations, and we went to motivational seminars and real estate seminars, and she was very much a pioneer in women's business too, which amazing mentor. So I did have that support, which was very beneficial. And when I acted out, she was also there in a way that was supportive. Um, I mean, I got in high school, I got in a lot of trouble. I was not very compliant, but I was very social. And when I got in trouble, I'd be grounded, and she'd say, this is just a bump. It's just a bump in the road for you because a fortune teller told me, and I don't know if the story was true or not, told me when you were 2 years old that you're going to be a great man. So this is just a bump in the road. And when I faced a few decisions in my life later that could have taken me a different direction, not as, in retrospect, not as successful. I had the voice in my head that said, this is not my path, and I'm going to be successful. I'm going to be in university. I'm going to be, the best student in the classes, and as healthy or as unhealthy that is, I channeled a lot of that into hard work.
Yeah. It's very interesting how our past lives actually affect how we live today and into the future. It is significant. Those because those events tell you who you are, and you start believing that about yourself, but they're not necessarily true. And so you've discovered uh, some of these things and peeled away what's not true to bring out what is.
Yeah, it's going back to your earlier question about why some people don't want to know. Um, I I mean, I would really challenge anybody who's stuck there and say it may be a little bit like opening a Pandora's box, but it's do it for yourself. It's the most growth I've experienced in my life in a period of time.
That's awesome advice because I would definitely recommend that as well. And, there are events in your life that can be, well, you might feel ashamed about them. You might feel embarrassed about them. They might be things you don't want to tell anybody about. There might be things that you don't even want to remember. They might be too horrible to remember. But if you don't remember them and get them out and deal with them, they'll come back to haunt you in some way or another. And a lot of people actually develop some kind of mental health problem or a physical disease because something is niggling the inside. Your unconscious and conscious minds must align. And if they don't, they will let you know one way
Yeah,
or another.
I think we talked about it earlier in the conversation before the podcast. It's one of the things I've researched is the science behind, because I don't feel I am getting more insights and different thinking than I've had before in my life. And the scientific research on adoptees is like our brains are like computers are like our brains. I mean, humans designed those, so hence it's like that. So in in always in the back of my mind, I always had a certain part of my brain that was going, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And where did I come from? And that piece just it's gone. So I'm getting a lot more insights about people and about business. The um, as we go through life, a lot of what's really important, what I'm talking to my grandsons about, which I'd love to have him on your show too, is it's important to be able to start with so much information coming at us today, understanding patterns, and then taking those patterns and integrating them into pieces that make sense, and then creating, if you really want high achievement, is creating a new pattern, right? Or pattern creation, I should say. So going from, I recognize this is a pattern and this is a pattern here. So integrating two disparate pieces of information and then creating something new. So, I mean, maybe I'm going a little deep here, but that's
No,
a really,
that's exactly what happens because people who have experienced things in their life and they've been affected, their behavior and their self belief and all that are tied up in relation to that thing that happened to them, then they're thinking in a certain pattern. Now, to get them out of that pattern of thinking, you have to bring in a challenge or a new pattern, or to get them to think outside that pattern. So you are in fact creating a little add-on pattern to complement what they already have and allow them more brain power because you can actually open up pathways in the brain. It's called myelination, and you can then create more brain power, more decision power, more critical thinking to be able to solve a problem and make better decisions.
that's,
So what you've
that's
said is exactly that.
it's exactly what's happened to me. And that that whole piece is opened up. And so I'm creating things I hadn't thought about creating before and putting together those patterns and learning um, I noticed you're a musician, learning bass and doing things like that that I had never taken the time for before.
Yeah, that's awesome. But I would like to now discuss your grandson because you did just mention that. And you are think about or started creating an intergenerational podcast with your grandson. Would you like to explain a little bit about that for our viewers and listeners?
Oh, sure. My grandson Finn, um, he just turned 13. He's very interested in understanding what success looks like and starting to shape um, what he wants his life to be. So he's actually starting to listen to some of the motivational videos and different things, and we share those back and forth. And so we had this idea to, why don't we do a um, grandson grandfather video together. So we're just started posting the first few that we did a few months ago, and he asked questions like, what advice would you give 11 to 14 year olds if you were at my school assembly, and what are other things you would recommend to me to be successful? What are the tools I need? And then I'm finding out from him um, what a 12, 13-year old's life looks like and what they do and what's motivating them, because it's a very different world than we grew up in today. You know, um, I grew up with a rotary phone, and they've grown up with this amazing computing power at their fingertips and all these other things. It's a different it's a different world. So it's been very educational for me, and I see it really supporting him in terms of he's trying to get his head and heart around what he wants to do and be successful, and he's going door to door and offering to, blow leaves for people and clean their yards and do that kind of thing. And he wants to know, how he can create things. And he sees somebody that's making $1 million a month in online marketing and kind of tunes into that. So he's developing all these ideas, and it's very motivating to watch what goes on in his mind to develop that. But he's also wanting to know what what leaders have in common. Like, um, I I won't be specific, but for example, certain politicians he looks at and he said, well, they're very successful, but they're not very, they're very not very nice people. So how do you balance that out? You're not president. Oh, I guess I am kind of going into it.
That's okay.
But he's president and you're not. So I can take your advice, but I think there's also that obligation we have to the people that are closest to us in our life, the people we love, that to provide that kind of mentorship or guidance for them about what is a good life. A good life doesn't always mean you're a billionaire or a trillionaire now. You're there's some just amazing moments, and I'm trying to teach him that there's there's something out there that you can call it karma. um, I think St. Francis said it's in the beginning, or it's in the giving that we truly receive, that when you do something there is a payback, and the science behind that is you do get something back in terms of feeling good and a benefit when you do other things, when you do
And
something people that are selfless, right? So selfish in a way, but it is selfless. So him forming the habits to be a good person is something I'm very committed to. And I've
a very
had
good role. Very good role.
yeah, I've had some success in business um and can give him my perspective, but I'm finding the clients I advise, I get some insights from him too on what's going on currently, which is really cool. It's a wonderful thing.
He sounds very switched on, Ken. And you can be a leader at any level in your life, in any part of an organisation or a community. You can be a leader at any time that you want to be a leader. And so there are leaders in high positions who don't always do the right thing in our eyes. Um, but we have to be the person we want to be. You got to be what you want the world. And so I think what you're doing with your grandson is really good because it takes a community to raise a child, right? A village, a community, and that's the immediate family, the extended family, and then a bigger uh, community around that child, so that they can see the perspectives of all of that, to know, to learn from everybody, and to model themselves on all the good things that they see around them. But what I see with some communities is they want to impose their expectations and limitations onto a person, and that's where it's wrong. You've got to try and let the person fly for themselves and give them what they need to do that. And a lot of parents don't want to do that. They um, they clip their child's wings in a lot of cases. But what you're doing is actually liberating your grandson, from what I can see. And I think it'd be
Yeah.
great to have that podcast where people his age at his school could, or other schools could actually listen to that. And I think that's fantastic. And people your age could listen to it and see what they could do for their grandchildren.
Yeah, ultimately the world we live in is I, I think it's always been divisive, but it's even more divisive than ever. And looking for that common ground and being open. I mean, that's one of the reasons travel is such an important thing, is you learn from other people. You may not have all the answers, and can I learn from a 12-year-old or 13-year-old? I do all the time. And can he learn from me? He's it seems like that would be the natural flow. It's not. I take on mentorships with organizations as well, and it's it's the it's the same thing. When I'm in there, I'm learning so much more than I expected if I have an open mind to it. And you know, a lot of
Yeah.
people as they age get set, and it's that balance between I've got that wisdom, or you know, the pattern recognition we talked about earlier. I've got this
Mm.
wisdom and I'm just going to come in and put that in on and everybody because there's a way to do things and it's been successful. Well, the world's changing so fast that yes, it's important to bring that in with an understanding of it could be, you know, the technology, which is the obvious one, or it could be just other factors on how the world has changed, how people are doing things differently. You know, when um, like look at dating these days. I met somebody today who there's an app called Bumble, and there's Match.com and all the others. I'm not sure what's popular in Australia, but um, I, at least half the younger people I meet now have met their spouses or significant others on one of these dating apps. Didn't happen when I was in my dating years.
Nor mine.
Yeah,
But yes, it is a changing world. But the thing is, you have information that is still valuable to people today, but it may impact people differently because circumstances. So I think what you said is right, that you've got to be aware of how your information is going to be received and how relevant is that and how is it relevant to those. So I think we're all learning at every age. Just because you're in your 70s or 80s doesn't mean to say you stop learning.
shouldn't,
You know,
right?
no, everybody's learning at any age. We will never know everything about even one subject. So there's
Well,
just so much to learn.
especially now. I mean, Christine, one of the things that blows me away is the amount of information that's out there, and there's this is the latest data. So from the beginning of time until I was in college, um, the amount of recorded information, every piece and bit of recorded information, beginning of time to the time I was in college, which wasn't forever ago, but 12, 12 hours now. That we get that hits us in 12 hours.
Mm.
Think about that. It's a very different world. I mean, AI is people, I deal with people that are in fear of AI, and there's, I, I mean, there's some interesting aspects to it. It's still a servant of ours,
Yeah.
but it's the next evolution, I believe, in humans. You know, when we needed to go faster, we invented automobiles and cars, and when we wanted to communicate, it was radios, and now, you know, all the other ways we have to communicate. With that amount of information to process, we have to have something to sort and filter, and AI is that. The concern I have, and you know what Finn, my grandson, and I talk about frequently, and Donnie talks about in her practice, is the more dependent we become on technology, and we're very dependent on it, but it's becoming greater and greater. It's just rising like this, that the need for human contact and human touch becomes even greater. And during the COVID, the pandemic, we saw so many mental health issues that occurred because people didn't have that contact. So,
That's right.
um, you know,
You
those
can
are
you
big
can be
issues.
yeah, they are big issues, and this is a concern from my point of view, from what I'm doing in my work, that you could have 100 contacts on Zoom and around the world, but you can still be lonely, right?
Yeah,
Because you need the in-person touch, hugging, shaking hands, patting people on the back, um, feeling the person, seeing the full person, not just a bust of them on the Zoom screen. You know what I mean? Because when you're with somebody, you feel their full energy, whereas I'm only seeing a part of you here. And so human beings need that physical, in-person relationships, engagement, interaction.
No, absolutely. I mean, 90, what is it? 90% of communication is nonverbal. And what we're getting, I mean, here is two-dimensional. So there's so much more to it than that. And yeah, there was a book John Nesbitt wrote in the 80s called Megatrends. And what he talked about is as technology increases, we will have that need with everything we've been talking about for more human touch. He called it high tech, high touch. And it's that, in my opinion, is the biggest downside to where we're going, where we're headed, and what I hope to impact. People communicating effectively and touching and being good to each other is really important.
And I think that's what you're doing with your grandchild. And I think it's a really good place to start.
Thank you.
So, okay, we're coming to the end of our discussion, and I have thoroughly enjoyed it, James, and I
Me
really
too.
appreciate your honesty. Um, in what you've said, I'm sure there'd be a lot of people who can relate to what you have described during this podcast. And I just want to know if you've got anything any key thing you would like to leave with our viewers and listeners as we wrap this up.
Yeah, a couple things that have become really apparent to me over the last year since this puzzle piece in my life um, has opened up is your voice will change as you change over time, but it's really important to to speak to speak your mind, speak your piece. I mean, not be a jerk about it necessarily, but finding your voice is a super important thing in your life. And the other thing I've learned, and really what resonated with me about your practice and what you do, is how do we deal with trauma? Because it's not um, there's not a good roadmap necessarily. And you know, I've been through that in my life. I didn't always recognize it as trauma. My half sister and other half sisters and half brothers certainly went through some of that, quite a bit of that, and have come out on the other side. So it it became rocket fuel for me. Was it always healthy? No. But my daughters can tell you how we'd go on vacation. I'd back in the day I'd have to move the car so I could be on a conference call during, the middle of our vacation schedule just because I had to do that for myself, to maintain um, what I believed I needed so my family wouldn't be out on the street in a shopping cart or, whatever to do. And that never happened, but fortunately, but it's you can you can let it the you can let it refine you or define you. And as my sister Donnie said, tough experiences she had, she just embraces them and is grateful that it's helped her to become the person she has today. And she's been a bit of a mentor in my journey too. And I do see it the same way. It's I wouldn't trade my life and my journey with anybody. It's been amazing. I have the most kick-ass story of anybody I know. And we didn't go deep into the family history, but there's some amazing things and I celebrate that.
Well, you'll just have to write a book about the deeper stuff now.
I'm I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
Awesome. No, it's been really fantastic, James, and I thank you very much. And I think that was a good note to leave people on that, trauma can happen to everybody and there can be varying degrees of it. But every event that happens in your life can affect you in some way from there on after. But depends how you look at it. If you look at it as a learning curve, oh, that's something I don't like, and I don't want to ever do it, and I don't want to mix with people who do that sort of thing, you've learnt something positive, haven't you? It's from a negative
Yeah,
event. So you can turn it into a positive, but you can learn from everything, good or bad.
I've had a lot of tuition payments.
Well, it's paid off, hasn't it?
It has. It really has. Thank you.
So thank you very much. Oh, how can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
I do have a website and it's James B as in boy, Hayden, Hayden.com.
Okay. And what's the books that you're writing? What's it going to be called, do you think?
You know, I haven't come up with the title yet. Um, I've got 3 by 5 cards. Um, I've got the chapters, and I'm writing a little bit on each chapter. But it'll be a fascinating journey. And if it gives one person hope, or one person that's faced with a trauma in their life, and gives them something to hang on to and pull out of that, great. And and I have a story to tell, and it's a good one.
I appreciate you telling it on my podcast. Thank you very much, James.
Thanks, Kristine. And I'll see if I can round up the rest of the crew for another one of these. I'd love to do that.
Awesome. That was very, very
Okay.
good. Thank you for being on my show.
Cheers.